I never thought borrowing a car would lead to the worst moment of my life. It was a normal Tuesday, and my car was in the shop for some minor repairs. My wife, Emily, had taken our other car to work, so I asked my neighbor, Greg, if I could borrow his for the evening. Greg and I weren't exactly best friends, but we had an unspoken agreement. Help each other out when needed, no questions asked. He tossed me his keys without hesitation, telling me he had just cleaned the interior and filled up the gas tank, so I was set for the night. I thanked him and went on my way, not realizing I was about to uncover something that would rip my life apart. As I sat in the driver's seat, adjusting the mirrors and the seat position, my foot hit something under the seat. At first, I ignored it, figuring it was just some random trash, but when I pulled it out, my heart stopped. It was Emily's scarf, the same one I had bought her for Christmas last year. The same one she wore only on special occasions because she claimed it was too nice for everyday use. I held it in my hands, turning it over, checking for anything that might explain why it was in Greg's car. Maybe she had left it there by mistake. Maybe Greg's wife had borrowed it. But Greg's wife had moved out months ago after their divorce, and Emily had never mentioned being anywhere near his car. My mind raced as I sat there, gripping the soft fabric like it held all the answers. I told myself to stay calm, that there had to be a logical explanation, but something in my gut told me otherwise. I wasn't the jealous type, never had been, but this didn't sit right with me. I placed the scarf on the passenger seat, deciding I'd ask Emily about it later, and started the car. But the moment I turned the key, the Bluetooth system connected, and the screen lit up with recent calls. My stomach twisted as I saw her name. Emily, listed multiple times, the last call made just 2 nights ago. I didn't even have to think. My hands moved on their own, scrolling through the system, looking for any saved contacts, message history, anything that might explain why my wife's name was in my neighbor's car. And then I found it. A voice recording, automatically saved from a previous call. Without hesitating, I pressed play. Greg, we have to be more careful. Emily's voice came through the speakers, clear as day. My breath caught in my throat, my fingers gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. I don't know how much longer I can keep sneaking around. He's not stupid. If he finds out. The recording ended abruptly, as if someone had cut off the call in a hurry. My entire body went cold. I sat there, the weight of those words crashing down on me, suffocating me. My wife, my neighbor, sneaking around. I didn't need any more proof. It was all right there, staring me in the face. I turned off the car, gripping the key so tightly it dug into my palm. I looked at the scarf again. The once meaningful gift now nothing more than a symbol of betrayal. My mind was a whirlwind of emotions, rage, confusion, heartbreak. I had been a fool, trusting her, believing in the life we had built together. I had been blind, and now, in the most unexpected way, the truth had crashed into me like a freight train. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. There was no denying it now. Emily was having an affair, and she was stupid enough to leave behind a trail leading straight to my feet. But if she thought I was just going to confront her and let her weasel her way out of this with lies and half-truths, she was dead wrong. I wasn't just going to ask her about the scarf. No, I was going to dig deeper, get every last piece of proof I needed. Because when I finally confronted her, I wanted to watch her world burn just like she had burned mine. I sat in Greg's car for what felt like hours, but in reality, it was maybe 10 minutes. My hands were still gripping the steering wheel, my body frozen in place as my mind tried to process what I had just heard. Emily's voice played on a loop in my head, the way she sounded anxious, the way she said my name like I was the threat, like I was the one she needed to keep secrets from. My wife, the woman I had trusted more than anyone. She had done the one thing I never thought she was capable of, and now I had proof. The question wasn't whether she had betrayed me. The question was how long it had been going on and just how deep this went. There was no room for hesitation anymore. If she had been sloppy enough to leave behind her scarf and let her voice get recorded in another man's car, there had to be more. I turned off the engine, grabbed the scarf, and stepped out, locking the car behind me. I wasn't about to give Greg any hint that I knew what was going on, not yet. I walked back into my house, my mind already forming a plan. I needed to stay calm. If I lost my temper too soon, she would cry, make excuses, flip the situation on me, and I couldn't let that happen. Not before I had every last piece of the puzzle. I went straight to our bedroom, pulled out my laptop, and started looking through the home security system. We had cameras in the front and back of the house, but nothing inside, something Emily had insisted on when we first got them installed. Privacy, she had called it, but now I wondered if that was just an excuse to keep her secrets safe. I checked the footage from the past few weeks, focusing on the nights she had come home late. It didn't take long to find something. 3 nights ago, at exactly 11:27 p.m., Emily's car pulled into the driveway. She sat there for almost 10 minutes, doing nothing. No movement, no phone light, just sitting. Then, Greg's car appeared on the street, slowing down as it passed our house. That was when she finally stepped out. She didn't look at the house, didn't rush inside. Instead, she took out her phone, typed something, and only after Greg's car disappeared down the street did she make her way in. I clicked through more footage, my heart pounding harder each time I found another piece of the story she never meant for me to see. The same pattern repeated last week and the week before. Greg's car always showed up late at night, always slowing down near our house, always leaving right before Emily finally decided to come inside. I exhaled, forcing myself to stay collected, but the anger was building fast. I checked my watch. Emily would be home in an hour. That gave me 60 minutes to decide what to do next. Confronting her right away wouldn't be enough. She would lie, twist the truth, make it seem like I was imagining things, maybe even blame me for not trusting her. I needed to put her in a position where she had no escape, no way to explain it away, no chance to gaslight me into thinking I was crazy. I needed her to admit it, to watch the moment she realized she had lost control of the situation. I reached for my phone and sent Greg a message. "Hey man, thanks for letting me use the car. Let's grab a drink this weekend, my treat." I hit send, knowing he wouldn't suspect anything. If he answered casually, it meant he had no idea what I had found. If he hesitated, if he made an excuse, that meant he was nervous, meant he suspected something was off. Less than a minute later, my phone buzzed. Of course, man. Saturday night. Simple, confident. Either he was completely unaware, or he was good at hiding his guilt. Either way, I'd find out soon enough. Emily walked through the front door right on schedule, tossing her bag onto the counter like she always did. "Hey," she called out, her voice casual, effortless, like nothing in her world had changed. I walked over, her scarf in my hand, holding it just tight enough that my knuckles turned white. This was in Greg's car. I didn't ask a question. I didn't give her a way out. I just said it, my eyes locked onto hers, waiting to see how fast she could come up with a lie. For a split second, she froze. It was so brief that if I hadn't been watching for it, I might have missed it. Then, she forced a small laugh, shaking her head like I was being ridiculous. "Oh, I must have left it there the other day when I got a ride home. You know how forgetful I am." She moved past me like the conversation was over, like that was supposed to be enough of an explanation. I stayed right where I was, my grip tightening on the scarf. Greg has a recording system in his car. That was a lie, but she didn't know that. I watched her body stiffen for half a second before she turned back to me, her expression carefully neutral. "What?" "Yeah." I nodded, my face giving away nothing. "He has one of those systems that records all calls and messages that come through the car's Bluetooth." I listened to it. I took a step closer, my voice calm, almost too calm. "I heard you." There it was. The crack in her mask. The way her lips parted slightly. The way her breath caught in her throat. She recovered quickly, but not quickly enough. "I don't know what you think you heard, but..." "Don't." I cut her off, my patience running razor thin. "Don't insult me by pretending you don't know exactly what I'm talking about. I know. I know everything." She swallowed hard, crossing her arms over her chest like that could protect her from what was coming next. "It's not what you think," she tried again, her voice softer this time. Like maybe if she sounded gentle enough, I'd let it go. "Then tell me what it is." I leaned in, close enough that I could see the panic in her eyes. "Tell me why you said you had to be careful. Tell me what you were so afraid of me finding out." She opened her mouth, but no words came out. She knew she had nowhere to go, no lie that would hold up under pressure, no excuse that could fix this. She had walked herself into a dead end, and she knew it. I stepped back, my hands shaking as I let go of the scarf, watching it fall to the floor between us like the last piece of our marriage slipping away. "I'm giving you one chance," I said, my voice quiet but sharp enough to cut through the silence. "Tell me the truth. All of it. Right now." She didn't move, didn't breathe. And in that moment, I knew exactly what was coming next. She was going to lie to my face. And that was going to be her biggest mistake yet. Emily stood there, silent, her face frozen in that carefully composed expression of someone desperately trying to calculate their next move. I could see her mind racing behind those wide, guilty eyes, trying to decide whether to double down on the lie or finally tell the truth. I wasn't going to let her escape. Not this time. The way she hesitated, the way she shifted her weight from one foot to the other, it was all so painfully obvious now. This wasn't just some misunderstanding. This was something she had been keeping from me for a long time. Something she thought she could get away with. Something she believed she could still talk her way out of if she just found the right words. Say something, I demanded, my voice steady but sharp, watching her carefully, waiting for her to crack under the weight of her own deception. You wanted to be careful? Careful about what? Careful about me finding out? Careful about sneaking around with Greg? Careful about ruining our marriage? Tell me, Emily, because I'm not going to stand here all night waiting for you to figure out what lie you think I'll believe. She exhaled sharply, her hands clenching into fists at her sides like she was angry at me for catching her, like somehow I was the one who had crossed a line. That alone told me everything I needed to know. A guilty person never immediately apologizes. They don't fall apart, they don't beg, they don't admit to anything unless they have no other choice. A guilty person's first instinct is to protect themselves, not to care about the person they hurt. Emily wasn't breaking down in regret or shame. She was trying to find an angle, a way to flip this back on me, a way to shift the blame just enough so she could convince herself she wasn't the villain here. You're twisting things, she finally said, her voice low, controlled, the same tone she used whenever she was about to start an argument that she thought she could win. You're making it sound like something it's not. You think you know everything, but you don't. You have pieces of something, and you're turning it into this whole. Then explain it. I interrupted, stepping closer, making sure she had nowhere to run. Explain to me why you were in Greg's car, why you called him so many times, why you sounded so afraid of me finding out. Go ahead, Emily, I'm listening. She swallowed, her eyes darting to the scarf on the floor between us, like she was searching for an excuse buried somewhere in the fabric. Then she looked back at me, her jaw tightening, her expression shifting from uncertainty to defiance. You're spying on me, she accused, her voice rising, her stance shifting from defensive to offensive in the blink of an eye. You went through Greg's car, you listened to private conversations, you're standing here interrogating me like I'm some criminal. Is that what our marriage is now? You sneaking around, looking for reasons to be mad at me? You don't trust me, and that's not my fault, that's yours. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was such a predictable move that I almost felt embarrassed for her. Of course, she was going to flip it. Of course, she was going to make this about me. Because the truth wasn't an option for her. Telling me what really happened meant losing. Meant admitting she was the kind of person who would betray her husband and then try to make him feel like the bad guy for finding out. This isn't about trust, I said, my voice calm but firm, refusing to let her manipulate the situation. This is about facts. And the fact is, I heard your voice. I heard you talking to Greg about sneaking around. I heard you say you had to be careful. I don't need to spy on you, Emily. You did this to yourself. So stop trying to change the subject and tell me the truth. She exhaled hard, her shoulders rising and falling, her hands shaking now as she crossed her arms over her chest, hugging herself like she was trying to hold in whatever was left of her excuses. I could see it, the battle going on inside her head, the desperate attempt to figure out if there was a way out of this. But there wasn't, and she knew it. Fine, she said finally, her voice sharp, like she was angry that she had to admit to anything. Yes, I've been talking to Greg. Yes, I've been meeting him. But it's not what you think. I felt my jaw tighten, my pulse hammering in my ears as I forced myself to stay still, to not let my emotions take control. Then tell me what it is, I demanded, my voice colder than before. She hesitated again, and that was all I needed to know, that whatever she was about to say next was another half-truth, another watered-down version of reality that she thought might be enough to keep me from walking out that door. I've been talking to him about us, she said, her voice softer now, trying to sound vulnerable, trying to make it seem like she was the one who had been struggling. About our marriage. About how distant you've been. About how things haven't felt the same for a while. I needed someone to talk to, and he was there. That's all it was. I clenched my fists at my sides, every muscle in my body screaming at me to stop listening, to stop giving her the chance to twist this into something it wasn't. So you just happened to have those conversations late at night? In his car? While telling him you needed to be careful? You expect me to believe that? She shook her head, letting out a bitter laugh, like she couldn't believe I wasn't falling for it. You don't get it, do you? I felt alone, Steve. I felt like I didn't matter to you anymore. And Greg, he listened. He understood. There it was. The moment she tried to justify it. The moment she wanted me to feel responsible for what she had done. But I wasn't going to let her rewrite reality. So you ran to another man instead of talking to me? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet now. You turned to Greg instead of your own husband? You let him comfort you. Let him listen to your problems. Let him be the person you should have been coming to. And now you want me to feel bad about that? You want me to believe this is my fault? She opened her mouth, but for the first time since this conversation started, she had nothing to say. I stepped back, the weight of it all pressing down on me, suffocating me. I don't believe you, I said finally, shaking my head. Not a damn word of it. And you know what? I don't care anymore. Her eyes widened slightly, panic flickering across her face for the first time. What does that mean? I turned away, walking toward the bedroom, grabbing my keys off the dresser. It means I'm done playing this game, I said over my shoulder. You made your choice, Emily. Now I'm making mine. And with that, I walked out the door, leaving her standing there with nothing but her lies and the mess she had created. I didn't go far. I needed space, but I needed answers more. I drove around the neighborhood, my grip tight on the wheel, my head spinning with everything that had just happened. Emily had lied to my face, tried to turn it around on me, and now she was probably sitting in that house, panicking, trying to figure out her next move. I wasn't going to give her time to cover her tracks. I wasn't going to let her destroy the evidence before I had the full truth in my hands. Greg was the missing piece, and I wasn't going to wait for him to slip up. I was going to make him tell me what Emily wouldn't. I parked 2 blocks away from Greg's house and walked the rest of the way. His car was in the driveway, his lights were on, and I could see the glow of his television through the window. I knocked hard, my patience already gone, my body still humming with the kind of rage that I hadn't let myself fully feel yet. It took a few seconds, but Greg answered, his expression shifting from confusion to concern the moment he saw me standing there. Steve, he said cautiously, his hand still gripping the edge of the door. Didn't expect to see you tonight. Let me in, I said, my voice flat, giving him no room to pretend like this was a casual visit. He hesitated, looking at me the way someone looks at a wild animal that might attack at any second. Look, man, if this is about. Open the door, or I'll make you regret it. He stepped aside without another word, and I walked in, the tension thick enough to choke us both. I turned to face him as he shut the door, his fingers twitching like he wasn't sure if he should act defensive or play dumb. I know, I said, my tone sharp, cutting through whatever excuse he had been about to throw at me. I know about you and Emily. I know about the late-night calls. I know about her being in your car. I know she's been sneaking around. So, let's skip the part where you insult my intelligence and get straight to the part where you tell me everything. Greg ran a hand over his face, letting out a heavy breath, his shoulders slumping like he had been waiting for this moment to come. Steve, it's not what you think, he started, his voice careful, like he was trying to ease me into whatever version of the truth he was about to give me. I took a step closer, my fists clenching at my sides. Then tell me what it is. He nodded slowly, like he was trying to piece his words together before saying them out loud. She came to me first, he admitted. Months ago, she said she was going through some things, that she felt like you two were drifting apart, that she didn't know how to talk to you about it. At first, it was just conversations, just her venting. And yeah, maybe I should have told you. Maybe I should have stayed out of it, but I didn't think it was my place to interfere in your marriage. I watched him, my face unreadable, my anger held tight beneath the surface. Keep going, I said, my voice steady, waiting for him to get to the part one already knew was coming. Greg hesitated, then exhaled, shaking his head. It changed a few weeks ago, he admitted, his eyes darting away from mine. She started coming over more. She started making excuses to be around me. She kissed me first, Steve. I swear to God, I didn't go after her. But I didn't stop her either. I took another step forward, my entire body stiff with the effort it took not to break something. How far did it go? He swallowed hard, finally looking at me again, finally realizing that there was no version of this where he walked away unscathed. Not all the way, he said, and for a brief second, I almost believed he thought that would make a difference. We kissed. A few times. She came over late a couple of nights, and it didn't go as far as it could have, but it wasn't nothing. I let his words sink in, let them settle like poison in my veins. He wasn't denying it. He wasn't trying to make excuses. He was just laying it out in front of me, like it wasn't already too late to fix anything. Did she ever talk about leaving me? I asked, my voice quieter now, but no less dangerous. Greg hesitated, then nodded. Once, he admitted. But she never said she would. She just talked about what it would be like if she did. I let out a slow breath, my fingers twitching as I fought the urge to do something I'd regret. You're done talking to her, I said finally, my voice like steel. You're done seeing her, done answering her calls, done being whatever the hell you were to her. If she tries to contact you again, you ignore it. And if I find out you didn't, if I find out you so much as looked in her direction, I'll make sure you regret every second of it. Greg swallowed hard, nodding quickly. I get it, man. I swear I'm done. I stepped back, my body still vibrating with the kind of anger that wouldn't settle until I had done something about it. But for now, this was enough. For now, I had what I needed. I walked out without another word, the cool night air hitting me like a slap as I made my way back to my car. My hands were still shaking as I gripped the wheel, my mind still replaying every second of that conversation, every word, every hesitation, every confirmation of what I had already known deep down. Emily had betrayed me. Greg had helped her do it. And now, I was going to make sure neither of them ever forgot what that felt like. I drove home with my mind running through 1,000 scenarios of how I was going to handle this. But by the time I pulled into the driveway, only one thing was clear. Emily had lost any right to my patience. I wasn't going to wait for her to come up with more excuses, wasn't going to sit through another round of her pretending I was crazy or paranoid. She had made her choices, and now, she was going to face them without a way out. I stepped inside, slamming the door harder than necessary, letting the sound fill the house as I walked toward the living room where she was sitting on the couch, her phone in her hand, her eyes already wide with panic the moment she saw me. She knew. She must have felt it in the way I looked at her, in the way I carried myself, in the way I wasn't hesitating anymore. Did you go to Greg's? She asked, her voice unsteady, her fingers gripping her phone so tightly I could see the strain in her knuckles. I didn't answer right away. I just watched her, waiting to see if she would admit to anything before I had to drag it out of her. She didn't. She sat there, silent, like she thought maybe if she didn't speak, I wouldn't do what I was about to do. I know everything, I said, my voice calm. Too calm, the kind of calm that should have terrified her. I know you kissed him. I know you went to his house late at night. I know you were talking about what it would be like to leave me. And I know you would have slept with him if you hadn't gotten caught. Her face went pale, her lips parting like she wanted to deny it. But for once, she didn't have a lie ready. She just sat there, her chest rising and falling too quickly, her entire body tense, her phone still clutched in her hand like it was the only thing grounding her. Steve, she started, but I cut her off before she could try to twist this into something it wasn't. Don't, I said sharply, stepping closer, watching as she flinched at the weight in my voice. Don't sit there and try to tell me it didn't mean anything, or that it wasn't serious, or that you were confused, or that you just needed someone to talk to. I don't care why you did it. I don't care what was going through your head when you made the decision to betray me. I don't care what excuses you think might make this easier to swallow. You did it. And now, you're going to deal with the consequences. She swallowed hard, finally setting her phone down, finally realizing that this was happening whether she was ready for it or not. I never wanted to hurt you, she said, her voice shaking, her hands gripping the fabric of her jeans like she was holding on to something for support. I laughed, short and bitter, shaking my head as I stared at the woman I had spent years of my life with, wondering how I had never seen this side of her before. That's the problem, I said, my voice steady, unwavering. You think that makes a difference. You think the fact that you didn't want to hurt me somehow erases the fact that you did. You didn't care about me when you were sneaking around behind my back. You didn't care about me when you were in his car. You didn't care about me when you were kissing him. The only reason you care now is because you got caught. Tears welled in her eyes, but I wasn't moved by them. Not anymore. I had spent years thinking I knew this woman, thinking we had something real, something worth protecting, but now I saw her for what she really was. Selfish, weak, a liar. "What do you want me to say?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, like she thought there was still a chance to salvage something from the mess she had created. "You had your chance to talk," I said, shaking my head. "Now it's my turn." I pulled out my phone, tapped the screen a few times, then turned it around so she could see what was on it. A video. A recording. Greg, standing in his living room, telling me every single thing they had done together, laying it all out in the open. Emily's face drained of color completely, her lips parting as her breath caught in her throat. "You think I was going to take your word for it?" I asked, tilting my head as I watched the realization settle into her bones. "You think I was just going to let you spin some half-truth and hope I believed it?" "No, Emily." I went straight to the source. I made sure there was no room for doubt. She reached for the phone, maybe to shut it off, maybe to throw it across the room, but I pulled it back before she could touch it. "Oh, don't worry," I said, slipping it into my pocket. "I have it saved in multiple places, just in case you get any ideas." Her breathing was uneven now, her hands trembling, her entire body frozen in place like she knew, deep down, that there was no getting out of this. "Steve, please." I shook my head, stepping back, already making my way toward the bedroom. "No, Emily. We're done. You made sure of that." She stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor as she reached for me, but I didn't stop. I walked into the bedroom, grabbed the bag I had packed earlier, and slung it over my shoulder. She followed, her footsteps frantic, her voice desperate. "We can fix this," she pleaded. "We can talk about it. We can go to therapy. We can." I turned to face her, cutting her off with a look so sharp it made her snap her mouth shut. "You don't get to decide what happens next," I said, my voice low, final. "You lost that right the second you chose him over me." She let out a broken sound, her hands gripping the edge of the doorframe as she stared at me, realizing that I wasn't bluffing, that I wasn't going to let her manipulate me into staying, that I wasn't going to be another one of her mistakes that she could smooth over with empty apologies and pretty words. I walked past her, down the hallway, toward the front door. She followed, but she didn't try to stop me this time. She just watched, her face streaked with tears, her body shaking, her world crumbling around her. I didn't feel sorry for her, not even a little bit. I opened the door, stepping outside, feeling the weight of years of trust and love and loyalty fall away like it had never existed at all. I turned back one last time, looking at the woman who had once been my everything, now reduced to nothing more than a stranger. "You did this to yourself," I said simply, then shut the door behind me. I didn't look back. I walked straight to my car, got in, and started the engine without hesitation. The second I pulled away from the house, a strange calm settled over me, the kind that comes when you know there's no turning back. I had spent years of my life building something I thought was unbreakable, and in the span of one night, it had been reduced to nothing. But there was no sadness, no overwhelming grief, no urge to scream or punch the steering wheel. Just silence, just clarity. Emily had made her choices, and now she was left to deal with them. I didn't need to hold her hand through it. I didn't know her anything. I drove without a destination in mind, just letting the roads take me wherever they led. At some point, I parked outside a small diner that was still open, the neon sign buzzing faintly in the quiet of the night. I stepped inside, the smell of coffee and fried food filling the air, the few late-night customers barely sparing me a glance as I took a seat in the corner. A waitress came over, tired but friendly, pouring me a cup of coffee without asking. I nodded my thanks, wrapping my hands around the warm mug, letting the heat sink into my skin as I stared at the dark liquid, my mind finally settling. I had done everything right. I had been loyal. I had been present. I had given Emily no reason to stray, no excuse to justify what she had done. And yet, she had still thrown it all away. I could spend hours, days, years wondering why, picking apart every detail, searching for the moment where it all started to go wrong. But in the end, it didn't matter. Some people were just wired that way. Some people were never satisfied, never content, never able to appreciate what they had until it was gone. That was Emily. That was who she had always been, even if I hadn't seen it before. And now, she would have to live with the reality of her own decisions. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through my contacts, and found my lawyer's number. It was late, but I didn't care. I sent a message anyway. I need to start the divorce process. Call me in the morning. I set the phone down, taking a slow sip of coffee, feeling the weight of that decision settle into my chest. There was no second guessing, no hesitation. This was what needed to happen. Emily had already lost me the moment she chose Greg over our marriage. The paperwork was just a formality now. The door to the diner opened, and I glanced up instinctively, half expecting to see someone I knew, half daring the universe to send me one more test to see if I was really done with this nightmare. But it was just a stranger, a man in a suit who looked just as exhausted as I felt. I exhaled, shaking my head at my own paranoia, forcing myself to focus on the present. This was my reality now. A life without Emily. A future that no longer included the plans we had made together. And as much as that should have scared me, it didn't. The waitress came back, pulling out her notepad, offering a tired smile. "You want something to eat, hon?" I thought about it, then nodded. "Yeah, give me whatever's good." She chuckled. "That depends on your definition of good, but I'll get you something." She walked away, and for the first time in a long time, I let out a breath that didn't feel like it was caught in my throat. This was it. The beginning of something new. Something unknown. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of it. Emily would wake up tomorrow, maybe thinking I would come back, maybe believing she could talk her way out of this, maybe realizing too late that she had shattered something that could never be repaired. But that wasn't my problem anymore. She had made her bed. Now she could lie in it. And as for me, I had a meal to eat, a divorce to finalize, and a future to figure out. One step at a time.